And we're back. It is the final normal main slate of the 2020/2021 NFL season. We'll have, showdown for the Super Bowl, but as far as getting to roster, three wide receivers, two running backs, quarterback, etc., this is the end of it. So how did last week treat you, Brady, and how has the season gone for you now that it's, all but over?
Yeah, I mean, knock on wood, but I have not lost money in the playoffs yet. So hopefully, keep it going here. Last week was pretty good. I was able to triple up with a Michael Thomas zero. Like Michael Thomas getting zero. Like, when does it ever happen? But it would have been a monster week if Thomas would have got it done. But got pretty much everything else right.
Yeah, I was in kind of the same boat. I had a lot of good min cash equity, 2x, 3x, nothing crazy, but just playing a lot of Mahomes, Kelsey, kind of got the job done. And I was in the same boat. Had a lot of Thomas and even Kamara, who I think got, I don't know, like 80 yards, few catches, no touchdowns. So although it wasn't zero, it wasn't what paid for. Having the Mahomes, kind of the bread and butter Mahomes stacks worked out in my favor. Also pivoting from Le'Veon Bell to Darrell Williams was quite nice, quite good for my bankroll as well. Instead of taking that awful Le'Veon Bell line, Williams was good enough, and he got you up some better plays. Well, not like Michael Thomas. Getting up to Michael Thomas was not an advantage, but there are some advantages to be had on this slate. We only have 2 games, 4 teams, so it won't take us super long, but we can dive a little deeper in. We can go team by team, or roughly team by team. All the context overlaps. So we'll start with Tampa Bay. I think the big thing we're monitoring here is Antonio Brown was out of practice on Wednesday. Not sure if we'll see him. He had to get an MRI on, I believe, his knee early in the week. If we don't see him, I predict we see a mix of Scotty Miller and Tyler Johnson, who both had a catch, both, I believe, in the second half of last week when Antonio Brown was sitting on the sidelines. Maybe even somehow more Cameron Brate. What do you think, if Brown is out, this does to the Tampa Bay offense?
I mean, I think personally, I'll probably bump up Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. We kind of talk about it every week that these wide receivers are going to go lower owned because, I mean, everybody doesn't know who to play. I mean, anyone can go off at any single time. And last week it didn't really work out. Neither one really did good. But this week they're priced so low. Mike Evans, 5,800. Chris Godwin, 5,400. The matchup's not great against the Packers, but I do feel like it's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. I think the total last time I checked was like 51, something like that. So I wouldn't be shocked if Evans or Godwin had a good game, especially if Brown's going to be out there. So more so if Brown's out, I'm going to be targeting them a little bit more. And as for Brate, like you mentioned, I mean, he's very cheap, 3,000. And it seems like I kind of thought Gronk would be the guy. And I remember like 2 weeks ago, I think Gronk put up a goose egg in my lineups. But it was Brate that ended up getting 12 points. I mean, he's very cheap. So if you're looking for a cheap tight end, Brate's been getting some decent targets, 6 targets in week 18, 5 targets last week. So I think Brate's something to really look at.
Yeah, I really think for me, the Tyler Johnson, Scotty Millers are reserved for a showdown only. It's just that I think we can reasonably predict both of them to be splitting the number 3 receiver role. I would imagine a slight lean towards Scotty Miller, but unless you're Antonio Brown in the number 3 receiver role, it's not incredibly valuable. Competing with tight ends who are pass catching tight ends. If they're competing with those guys, I think you can I won't have much of these guys. Maybe a little bit, optimize or put them in for me, so be it, but I will not be making it a point to get them. The backfield is a similar-ish situation where it's like, do we want to try and chase these low-owned, I assume they'll be modestly low-owned, but not very well projecting plays. I mean, do I want to play Ronald Jones the second half, probably, of a backfield that is going to be an underdog? I don't know. You tell me. Do you have any interest in maybe some low-owned Ronald Jones?
I mean, yeah, the low-owned part definitely has some interest, and I do think he has been playing hurt a little bit. That could be why Fournette seems to be, taking over the backfield in the last 2 weeks, 21.7 DraftKings points. Before that, 23.2 DraftKings points. I think a lot of people are going to chase that. I do think that it's going to gain a lot of ownership. So Ronald Jones, last week, what did he get? 13 carries, 1 target. That's not awful, 4,600. I don't know, but like you mentioned, they're going to be slight underdogs. I think they're like 3-point dogs last time I checked. Do we want to keep chasing the Fournette? I don't know. It's really tough, and I don't know what I'm doing yet, but it's definitely a backfield to keep your eye on. So I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I guess my lean right now, maybe play some Jones. I do think he's going to be extremely low owned. Maybe they do use him a little bit more than they have been, but like I said, he's playing a little bit hurt. That could be why he's Fournette's going off as of late.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you that all as ugly as it is, I'll reveal my strategy in the second game, but I'm going to be going through a lot of permutations of one specific lineup. Ronald Jones is going to be getting into those permutations. Like you said, he's not, didn't disappear last week. 13 carries isn't bad. I mean, it's more than I got with Devin Singletary, I can tell you that much. So I don't know. I don't think it's the worst play at low ownership and leverage off of probably modest to highly owned Leonard Fournette. So I think he's a really interesting tournament leverage play. If you've got some chalk elsewhere in your lineup, maybe this is a place you can go to get a little bit different. I guess in terms of the team as a whole, any interest in stacking this team? For me, I don't know. As a team that I believe they're probably projected to score the least points of the main slate, and they're also one of the least, they're probably the least predictable of all four teams on the slate. Both of those factors, I'm not really too interested in them.
No, I mean it's definitely hard to get there. I mean Tom Brady, when you got guys on the slate like Patrick Mahomes, guys like Josh Allen, even guys like Aaron Rodgers, it's really hard to get there. The price 6,100, it's intriguing, but I'd rather I'd rather go with the other three, honestly.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way. I'm only gonna have one quarterback, and we'll find out who he is soon enough. He is not Aaron Rodgers, although I'm thinking about maybe introducing a little bit of Aaron Rodgers into my lineups. He's just so cheap for his upside. I mean, he threw 48 touchdowns in the regular season. That was 8 more than the next closest player, and he's cheaper than 2 of the 4 quarterbacks. So, at least on DraftKings, he is. I think he might be more expensive on FanDuel. Not sure. I'd have to double check that. But I don't know. If you've got that cheap of a player in Aaron Rodgers, I guess just from a top-down level, does his price entice you to actually get to him?
I mean, yeah, the price stuck out to me right away. 6,500. It's somebody that, I mean, he's not going to have that rushing yard upside. He's not going to throw a crazy amount of balls. I mean, last week he did throw 36. Before that, he got 24, 25, 29. It's just how efficient he is. So he doesn't need to throw the ball that much. But the output that he has is kind of concerning there. But yeah, I mean, 6,500. That's definitely a good deal there for Rodgers. Of course, we have great stacking options. Devontae Adams is somebody I really want to go to this week. I really want to make it a priority to get Devontae Adams into my lineup at 8K. Last week had a really good game, scored about 21.6 DraftKings points against a very tough Rams matchup. This Buccaneers defense does not scare me in the slightest. So yeah, I might have some Aaron Rodgers stacks. I really do. I think great stacking options: Adams, Lazard. Even Tanyan at 3,600. So I kind of liking this Rodgers play here. Obviously not my favorite option. The next guy we'll talk about is probably my favorite, but yeah, I like Rodgers at that price.
Yeah, I think even if I'm not getting into a ton of Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams is he'll probably be in almost all of my lineups, I would have to imagine. It's just that price isn't really it's not much of a constraint on this slate. Running back is so egregious that I don't know. Am I too concerned with how am I going to pay up for Aaron Jones? No, he's only 65, I believe, 100, maybe 6,900, and he's the only expensive running back, and there are only a handful of expensive receivers. So as you get down in these 2-game slates, do I really need to save that Devontae Adams money? No, I'm spending my Devontae Adams money on Devontae Adams. So I think just in terms of his production in wins, he's averaging over 9 carries, over 9 receptions, I believe over 110 yards, 111 yards, and over 1 score. It's 1.4 touchdowns per game in Packers wins that he stays healthy for. So as long as Vegas is in the ballpark of correct, Devontae Adams is just a pivotal cog into their success as an offense. Vegas has them as a successful offense on this slate, so I'm not going to doubt that. I'm playing a lot of Adams. Any interest in Lazard, Scantling, even outside, I think on a 2-game slate, you don't even need to correlate those guys with your quarterback. If one of them hits, you'll need them whether or not Rodgers hits. Any preference between the two of them?
I mean, probably Lazard for me because I think he's actually kind of skilled. I mean, Scantling, I don't think he's that good, but yeah, Lazard, he did have a deep touchdown last week, I believe. He scored 19.6 DraftKings points. Still cheap, 4,200. So Lazard, if anything, but I don't know, like we said last week, it seems like, some weeks Scantling just catches this long bomb out of nowhere. So I think it's something to definitely look out for. But if I had to pick between the two, I'd go with Lazard, and he's only 300 more as well.
Yeah, I think, man, I like the idea of Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I don't actually think I like Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I like the idea of a guy with a 28 ADOT who plays a lot of snaps with Aaron Rodgers, and then it hits the field, and I don't actually end up liking it. So I'll probably another guy who, because my quarterback is coming up here, and I'm going to be playing as many lineups as I can of this quarterback, I'm going to get deep into the depths of what does my quarterback with the 10th best receiver on the slate look like. that's going to be Marquez Valdes-Scantling at some point, so I'll have some of him. Last thing, I think Aaron Jones is like if you have the money, you should probably be playing Aaron Jones because he's the best running back on this slate by a considerable margin. I'm not making a huge priority to get to him though. Honestly, I'd rather pay down from Jones to, Singletary in the next game if that gets me up to Devontae Adams. Like prioritizing the receiver studs is something I'll be doing on this slate, and Travis Kelce. I'm just not as much prioritizing Aaron Jones. I'd like to play him, but he's just not a must play for me. Any interest, I guess, if he elevates to that must play for you, go ahead. But I'm more interested. Do you have any interest in Jamal Williams?
I definitely thought about it. I mean, he's somebody that definitely can pass the ball, and it's really hard to run on this Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense. I think they have the best run defense in the league. So I definitely did look at it. 4,400. He's been getting some decent usage as of late. I think he had 12 touches last week. So I think he's definitely somebody to note. I think nobody's going to play him. So for that reason, I do have interest in Williams. And as far as Jones, I mean, I'm kind of with you. I do want to make a priority to get guys like Devontae Adams in my lineup, guys like Tyreek Hill, Stephon Diggs, guys like that. Kind of like last week, I did the same thing, paid down at running back, paid up a wide receiver. It worked all great besides the Thomas play, but Stephon Diggs did great last week. So, I don't hate Jamal Williams, probably like really low ownership, and I do think he has some upside. He's been getting usage. Don't hate that call at all.
All right, let's move on to, and now we'll know who Mike is, although it is not Josh Allen. It'll be the next quarterback we talk about, although I do like Allen. I'm just prioritizing one player. Let's talk about the Bills. The Bills are another team with a slight injury concern at, I guess, number 4, not number 3 receiver. Gabriel Davis is, I think, did not practice as of Wednesday. If he doesn't play, some potential value in, I guess, do you think there's potential value to be had if Davis doesn't play? It seems we'd see a little bit of Isaiah McKenzie, who had a really good week 17, although, asterisk, it was week 17. Maybe we see some Dawson Knox. I mean, we've seen Dawson Knox for most of the second half of the season. It's just when you see Dawson Knox, it's his second and final target of the game. Do you think this opens up any extra value of those two guys?
I mean, I think it opens up a little bit of McKenzie, and like you mentioned, he had a really good week 17. He scored like 30.5 DraftKings points. I do think that's something to note. I mean, McKenzie's somebody that's really cheap at 3,100. So definitely looking at that for like a pump play if Davis is out. And I think these Bills wide receivers are really interesting. I mean, John Brown is somebody that put up a goose egg 2 weeks ago, and then guess who put up a goose egg last week? It was Cole Beasley. So they're kind of switching gooses back and forth. So I think one of them is definitely going to bounce back. I don't know. Don't really have a preference between the two, but I think they're both solid plays here against Kansas City in a game that they maybe a good chance they're going to be trailing as well. So I think John Brown and Cole Beasley, just at their price points of 4,300, 4,100, are really interesting to note. I can't pick between the two right now, but I do think I want some exposure to them.
Yeah, I mean, with the amount of lineups I'll be building, I won't need to pick between the two. And because now you know that I'm stacking Patrick Mahomes, I'm going to want a run back probably in every single one of those lineups. I'm not sure if I'd be mandating it yet, but generally speaking, I am just going a ton of Chiefs. And because of that, I think their game goes well. So that means I think that they both score a lot of points and get scored on a lot. I'm going to be having a ton of both Cole Beasley and John Brown. I think this game, it's only a 3-point higher total, but I think because of the pricing, like structure, if you want to call it that, it's not much of a structure. It's a play, mostly whoever you want. You can fit in most of the studs. You rule out one or two, and you've pretty much built a great lineup that stacks one game. I'm just going to take the game that I don't think the ownership's going to be massively slanted towards this game, especially on the Chiefs side. I think the Bill side is going to be the more popular overall construction because of how cheap, relatively speaking, Josh Allen is. I'll be taking the other side, but still the same game. Any interest in, I guess, what's your level of Josh Allen versus Patrick Mahomes? Because for me, that's what the slate comes down to. I'm leaning Mahomes right now, but I think Josh Allen is perfectly equitable as well.
No, it's definitely close. I mean, they're really close in price as well. I think Mahomes is like 400 or 500 more, but I mean, I think they both have a ton of upside. Josh Allen's obviously been fantastic, especially as of late, averaging 26.9 DraftKings points, and we all know what Mahomes can do. Of course, he's going to be playing a little bit injured, a little bit beat up, it looks like, but still, I think Mahomes, if he is healthy, if he is fine, I do think he'll be fine there. So it's a tough one between the two. I do know I want a lot of ownership between them as well. If I had to pick right now between the two, I'd probably go on the Mahomes side because I think he has more upside, a little bit better matchup. But both guys have good matchups here. I think that's going to be a pretty high-scoring game. I think the total last time I checked was like 55, something like that. So I could see this being a shootout. I really don't think you can go wrong with either guy. I think they both have great stacking options. I guess maybe it's up to ownership for me. I'm going to definitely check the ownership, maybe go with the lower owned one, because I think they both have probably the same amount of upside, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think as of early in the week, it looks like maybe the ownership will point towards, will be in favor of Josh Allen, which would point me the other direction. I'm not sure, maybe that's factoring in a lot of this Mahomes concern. I really have no concerns that he doesn't play. It just seems like logged what they called a limited practice, but I saw that that's basically because when you're in concussion protocol, you're not allowed to log full practices. But Andy Reid said he took every snap, so he's a full participant in practice. If he's able to practice, he's able to play. And the NFL is certainly incentivized to have him versus Chad Henne playing. So I think it's sort of like the Alvin Kamara situation where he was, oh, is Alvin Kamara going to play? He didn't practice all week. It's the playoffs. He's your star player. Of course he's going to play. Same thing with Mahomes. I don't think we're really at risk of not seeing him at all, but he's going to be listed as questionable probably up until the end of the week. If that even gives me a 1 or 2% edge of people not playing him, I'm going to take that edge and run with it. To close out the Bills side, I guess, Devin Singletary last week, he saw all but 2 of the backfield carries. That's awesome. I believe he saw every target for the running backs in Buffalo as well. Exactly as I planned. I did not plan that to be 7 carries, and the team would run 9 non-quarterback running plays. Can we go back to him? He's cheap, but he was also terrible last week.
Oh, he was awful, and I kind of like that he was awful, and I kind of like that they kept the price the same as last week. Last week he was 4,500. This week he's 4,500. If he's going to be the most used back on the Bills, and it's not going to be like nothing crazy, but if he can get that 10 to 15 touches, 4,500, maybe he finds the end zone. I'm going back personally, but yeah, it's really scary thing. I mean, only 7 carries. He did have 3 targets, 3 receptions, only 6.7 DraftKings points, but at that price, I'm not asking for much. Hopefully find the end zone, because I will have a lot of Singletary. It's just so easy to fit him in your lineups, and it should be a really high-scoring game here. So yeah, I'm going back to Singletary this week. Hopefully he does better than last week, because that was pretty bad.
Yeah, the good news is, as I said, saw nearly all of the backfield, the non-quarterback carries. I believe saw all of the non-receiver targets or non-receiver tight end targets. Market share numbers are good. It helps when your team actually gives you a pie to work with. But I do think at his price, if he's going to see nearly all of the backfield touches, I think we kind of just have to go back to him. On principle, guys with those market share numbers make their way into my lineups when they're at those prices. Moving on to the Chiefs, the team I will be stacking a ton of. Right now, they have the highest implied team total of the slate. This game, like you said, has seen anywhere 40 or 54 to 55, and the other game at like 51, 51 and a half. Both teams that are favored by exactly a field goal, depending on where you're looking. That gives the Chiefs the highest implied team total. I don't think pricing is much of an issue on this slate. And you are playing, I would say, even like irregardless of the median projection, I think like you sound like you thought this. They seem like the highest ceiling team. I mean, Mahomes, I think, was literally on pace for another 5,000-yard season. Had he played week 17, I think he was averaging 310 passing yards, like averaging the 300-yard bonus, and through like 40 scores or 38 scores, would have been only behind Rodgers in touchdowns. Basically, everything else would have been pointing us in fantasy terms to someone like Mahomes. So I think if you can get that player in your lineups fairly easily, you should always be doing it. I will be doing that. I'll be playing a ton of Kelsey for that reason, a ton of Hill. The biggest thing that I think makes it kind of easy to get different is I'm not sure how much ownership we're going to see on whoever the number 2 wide receiver is for the Kansas City Chiefs. If it's Sammy Watkins, I doubt people get to him. He has done nothing but burn us for the entirety of the season, I think dating back to week 1, but he runs routes on 80% or more of Patrick Mahomes' dropbacks. And anytime that is true of a player, it could be you out there. It could be Emil out there. I will play Emil at 4,800 or whatever he is if Patrick Mahomes is hucking him the ball. That's just, those are my principles, because players who get targets or are on the field a lot with Patrick Mahomes tend to have spike weeks. I'm not saying they don't have bust weeks in between. Fairly often for Sammy Watkins, but their ceilings are incredibly high. So I'll be playing a lot of Watkins if he starts. I'll be playing, even if Watkins does play, I'll still have probably over the field exposure to Robinson, to Hardman, because they're just smaller versions of Sammy Watkins. Less routes run, less targets, but 3 Mahomes targets may be all DeMarcus Robinson needs.
Yep, I definitely agree. And I was looking at the same thing. Watkins, he's so cheap, 3,800. If he plays, I'm definitely going to be overweight on Watkins. And like you said, he burned people all year, every year. He burned me a couple times as well. And at this price, it's really hard to ignore in a game that should be possibly a shootout. I think Watkins, if he does play, like that price is way too hard to ignore there. Yeah, as for Hardman and Robinson, more so for me, if Watkins doesn't play, I'll be a little bit more interested in them. But you definitely made a great point. All they need is like 3-4 receptions, a touchdown, and to hit value there. But for me, it's Watkins. I mean, if Watkins plays, I'm going to be all over it. 3,800. I mean, that's too cheap.
Yeah, I guess, we can talk about Travis Kelce. Doesn't feel like the most interesting conversation. Is there any reason you really would get would you even go under the field at all? Let's say he's 60% owned. Would you go 50, 40, 30 range?
So this week, I mean, it's Travis Kelce, and there's like a huge drop. You got Tanyan. I guess Tanyan and Brady are the other two I'm looking at. Maybe Dawson Knox, but yeah, I'm definitely gonna be overweight to Kelce. I'll throw in a little bit of Tanyan and Brady there, but I mean, it's really hard to get away from Kelce. I mean, he's been fantastic all year, averaging 22.5 DraftKings points. The price doesn't scare me. Like you said, it's easy to make lineups. Had a great week last week, 27.9 DraftKings points. It's really hard not to get to Kelce, so I'm definitely going to prioritize him in my lineups. Try to get overweight to him, but I will sprinkle in some other tight ends in there, Tanya and Brady, maybe some Knox as well.
Yeah, I'll have some other tight ends. I will just also have more Travis Kelce than the field does. The last thing I guess we can touch on is the backfield. Clyde Edwards-Helaire logged a limited practice today. That's Wednesday. I mean, it's sort of the same principle that I talk about with Sammy Watkins. If we think he's going to play, which I mean, we'll know before the game kicks off, if he's going to play, he's going to be, I believe if he's healthy, he's probably close to an every down player. In the final 3 games he played before injuring his hip/ankle, they also listed him with the ankle injury, he out-carried Le'Veon Bell 41-10 and out-targeted him 9-5. Darrell Williams and I think Anthony Sherman combined for a handful of targets, no carries. It's pretty clear that in the final games we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire, they were committing to making him their lead back. Sort of like the Bills, they don't use their running back as much as other teams, but 12 carries and 3 targets on a team led by Patrick Mahomes, like that could be 3 red zone carries and a downfield target from Patrick Mahomes, that wheel route that Damian Williams shredded people with. So I think I'm fine with playing him in Patrick Mahomes lineups. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have non-Patrick Mahomes lineups, but if I weren't to have him, I would have him as leverage off Mahomes. I think he can even correlate with Mahomes just as a complete onslaught. What do you make of the backfield if he plays? And if he sits, is it just like jam Darrell Williams again?
Yeah, I mean that was a great call by you, Darrell Williams. He was 4K last week. So yeah, great call. He scored 13.4 DraftKings points. But yeah, I'm all over Clyde Edwards-Helaire if he does play on one of the best offense, if not the best offense in the league, and the Chiefs here in a game that they're going to be favored and in a high scoring game and somebody that's going to get the majority of the touches. Clyde Edwards-Helaire seems like way too cheap at 5,000. Of course, you mentioned he's not going to get crazy usage. I mean, 14 attempts in week 15. 16 attempts. So he's probably going to around like 15 to 20 touch range, and at 5,000 on a great offense. If he does play, I'm all over it. But if he does not, plug in Darrell Williams, 4,800. I guess what I'm concerned about is the ownership if Edwards-Helaire does play, because I remember last week he was projected to be pretty high owned, I believe. So I'm going to look out for that. But yeah, I think he's in a really good spot.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I'd gotten paid off a little more for calling Darrell Williams because, he doesn't score, doesn't have the 100-yard bonus. I mean, he outscored Devin Singletary, but I also had a lot of Devin Singletary. So, it didn't pay off a ton, but I would go right back to Darrell Williams, especially it really depends on when the news comes out. If the news comes out like Saturday morning, like that's what happened with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. The news didn't come out till overnight just before the game. I think that has a very noticeable impact on the backup's ownership. I think had we been given more time to digest Clyde Edwards-Helaire not playing, like I think it was like 1%, 1% ownership on Darrell Williams in the play action. It's not the sharpest field, but it certainly is like at least worth considering the ownership in any contest. I think he would have probably climbed to 7, 8, 10% ownership had it been known Monday that Clyde Edwards-Helaire wasn't going to be playing. So when we get the news can be, just as important or at least a major factor in how we react to the news. If again, we get Clyde Edwards-Helaire overnight not playing, I might put 80, 90% Darrell Williams because I think he'd come in at 25 to 30. And that is just not efficient on a slate where there are like 6 startable running backs. So, that's my take on especially the timing of how it all plays out. Will be interesting to watch. So I think that covers everything, though. That covers everything for the entirety of the season's main slate. We'll have some showdown show coming up. But for myself, at Kyle Tweets here on Twitter, for Brady at DFS_numbers. Thanks for tuning in all season, guys.